Welcome to another episode of the Pickled Perspective. I'm your host, Rob Winters, and today I want to talk a little bit about my recent presentation on the Podcast Profit Summit. So, the presentation was listeners to lead, or wait, leads to listeners. Wow, that was a great backwards moment for you. Um, so, that really ties to why we reinvented our analytics or added a bunch of new analytics tracking components into the PodOps platform, and it all stems from the things that our users are requesting. So, every podcast platform has kind of the generic things of downloads, plays, shares, and those are great. They're important metrics, or I think they're important metrics. But a lot of the platforms, they have more data than that. So, for example, a metric we've added in is average play time. So, in the presentation, and I'm obviously just diving right in, why beat around the bush? In the presentation with the host Eric Yang, we were kind of, he asked me, what do I think are the important metrics for a podcast? And I think it's actually difficult to say, this one's more important than that one. They can, depending on what your goals are, I you can argue they're all important in different ways, or maybe this one's more important for this versus that, depending on if you're trying to get sponsors. Um, Really, the summation of what I was trying to suggest was that there's a lot of data in there and out there for podcasters, and podcasters are constantly like, oh, we want data, we want data, we want data. But what I often see is that even if we're giving podcasters data, a lot of them aren't doing anything with it. So I would say it's not that there's bad data out there or useless data, it's not getting used. So if you don't use it or learn to understand it, then what's the point of having it, right? It becomes useless at that point. So within our platform, I think it's important to look at your podcast website views, your total plays, and then your average play time. So think of the views if you are familiar with Google Analytics, which I think most of us are. If you use the websites we provide you or the pages for your podcast episodes, any of the visitors that come there, they create a session. So that becomes a view. So that, gives you your initial number. You now know what traffic is hitting that page. If they hit play on the episode, okay, that starts to play. So it's like they've gone from view to play. Now, per IAB rules, it has to hit at least 60 seconds before it counts as a play. And then it counts every 60 seconds. So that play, once it hits 60, there's your play. And then the breakdown or average of that is, what is the average of your plays versus the total number of people that play. Again, it has to hit over that 60. So those are kind of the three core metrics that you'd want to look at. But we've taken it a little bit further to help anybody using PodOps try to understand who are your podcast listeners versus your actual engaged audience members. So when somebody subscribes to your podcast through your podcast website, they get an entire listener portal now. So we let them, rather than just plop in their name and their email, they can actually put in all of their interests, their preferences, all kinds of good stuff that populates the trends and demographics and interest section within your reports, as well as other reporting sections of other podcasters in the PodOps platform, assuming they subscribe to those podcasts. But in your reports now, we break it out versus your registered users versus unregistered, so you can start to see who are the people who are actually tuning into your podcast, who they truly subscribe. These are your loyal listeners. These are the people that they're tuning in every week. They're actually playing, they're listening to the episodes versus those passive individuals who maybe they stumbled across an episode. But as you start to look at those numbers, if you've got a really large group of people who are not subscribed and you're saying, okay, I get 10, 50, 100 people who are visiting my podcast website, I'm getting 10 plays on an episode and the average play time's a minute, but my episodes are all 10 minutes long. You can start to use that data to say, okay, is my website bad? Is it the graphics? Is it the cover? Or is it the title of my episodes? Are those not appealing? And as you start to tweak those things, if you see, okay, I've got 100 people coming to the site, the plays are starting to go up. I'm seeing more plays, but that average play time is not increasing. That's where you can look at your content. So is your intro too long? Or, if you have a several minute long intro, probably boring people. Or if you have a, nice short 10, 15 second intro and you're not jumping into the content, or you're taking too long to get started, or you go off track, people are probably tuning out. So again, we're trying to give you all of these metrics to understand somebody coming from your website, hitting play, to actually listening to the content and knowing where they're dropping off in that journey. And then we've also added in a heat map into the reporting. So you can look at the last 7 days based on day of week and time of day and see, all right, if 2 a.m. on a Tuesday is when you're getting a ton of people that are tuning in versus you always release your episodes on Monday at 8 a.m. You might want to think about, okay, maybe I release my episodes Tuesday at 2 a.m. when people are all tuning in. So you can actually use that heat map to manipulate when you drop episodes in more of a real time fashion to try and engage those individuals who might not be signed up or subscribe to your podcast in an effort just to leverage them a little bit more. So we dig a lot deeper into that in the summit episode, but yeah, all of those metrics are just included. We also dig into a little bit of, you know how you can use some of the trends, things like, or excuse me, demographics, things like gender, household income. So, again, those are things that we're tracking, that anybody who is signing up or they do allow cookies, that can be tracked. So, that's reported back into your podcast demographics. So, as you're promoting your podcast on social, and again, I'm a big advocate of free social advertising. I don't like to do paid media, not because I don't believe in it, but it's expensive. So if you're a normal podcaster, you probably don't have tons of cash to be throwing behind paid ads or paid marketing. So promoting yourself across every social network that you're on, putting all your episodes out there with a call to action, getting people back to your podcast website, that's the best way to at least drive that initial group of people onto your website to get them there. And then you've got to have the engaging content. You've got to have a good podcast cover. I see a lot of bad podcast covers, or people that assume that, you know, they've got to have a podcast cover with, a big flashy image or their face on it. Not necessarily, but you want a cover that actually tells me, what is your podcast about? Assume that I have no attention span and I'm going to quickly glance at it. So make sure it's eye catching. It tells me exactly what your show's about in that 2 seconds I'm going to look at it, long enough for me to want to click play or at least download. So if I'm just passively looking at it, especially on a phone, that I might download it, save it for later, and come back, because those downloads also track. So that's something you're going to see as well in your metrics. If I hit download, that's there. So again, all those metrics are out there. Again, I don't think there are any bad metrics for you as a user, but you have to use them. So to Eric, who asked me what metrics would I say are bad, none of them are bad as long as you use them. The biggest downfall that I see with our podcasters is they've got all this data, they don't use it, or they continue to collect it and just let it sit. So it's only effective if you're utilizing it. As always, if you have questions about the data in your account, you can reach out to us at any time. We're always here to help. You can reach out to our live support team or hi at thepodops.com and we'll help you. But yeah, that's it. Just wanted to give you guys a quick update on what we're doing with analytics, a little bit about the Podcast Profit Summit, which you can check out at, ooh, I got to look at their link. Terrible with links. Podcastprofitsummit.com. That should have been obvious, right? I believe they're letting you sign up for free if you want to take a look at that. There are a ton of great speakers that participated, so give that a check. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Everybody have a great day, and I will talk to you next Tuesday.